This might be one of the most brutal takedowns you'll see in Congress, because it's not just criticism, it's a warning that the military is being pulled away from defending America to policing it.
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In response to my colleague from Oklahoma, I believe the Secretary of Defense has just responded last week and admitted that the $1 billion mission that he led against the Houthis, who do not have a Navy, has not restored the transit of U.S. flag commercial vessels through the Red Sea, and in fact has resulted in the loss of 2 F-18 Hornets to the tune of $60 million apiece, as well as, I believe the last count was 7 Reaper drones to the tune of another $200 million. You are blowing through money like my fellow cadets and I did in our first Liberty after basic camp. Luckily, I didn't end up with a questionable tattoo. Your failures, Mr. Secretary, since you've taken office has been staggering. You sent classified operational information over Signal to chest thump in front of your wife, who, by the way, has no security clearance, risking service member lives in the process. You blew the $1 billion fight against the Houthis, whom, again, as my colleague says, has no Navy, and yet you lost all of those aircraft. You've created such a hostile command environment that no one wants to serve as your chief of staff or work with you in other senior DoD leadership roles. But what we should all be talking about, more than all of this, is that you have an unjustified, un-American misuse of the military in American cities, pulling resources and attention away from core missions to the detriment of the country, the warfighters, and yes, the war fighting that you claim to love. I don't know if this is because you are too inexperienced and incompetent to understand the real threats facing our country, or if it's because you are just an unqualified yes man who can't tell the president how to keep Americans safe. You are focusing on renaming bases for Confederate generals. You said just now to Senator King that to a man and to a woman, we would rather be associated with the old Confederate names. Well, I am one of those women. I served at Fort Rucker, Alabama, a base that was named for a traitor who took arms against the United States of America, led troops who killed Americans. It was renamed for Mike Novosel, a Medal of Honor recipient, who in his citation for the Medal of Honor includes that he saved 29 American lives, to include hovering backwards in a helicopter towards an enemy bunker where a wounded American was laying and saved that person, including after being taken fire himself. I know a little something about what it takes to fly a helicopter when you've been hit by enemy fire. That was heroic. I'd rather be associated with Mike Novosel than a failed Confederate traitor. I don't know whether you are inexperienced or too incompetent, but I wonder when you will actually focus on our nation's warfighting mission. We know that California is just a deliberate, systematic, political, and dangerous campaign led by you. We should not be using our military to play cops against Americans. General Kane, as chairman, a key part of your job is to coordinate military planning across the joint force. Is the department currently incorporating into any military plans expanding the use of the reserve forces to include the National Guard or active duty troops to support domestic law enforcement, including in other locations in the United States?
Senator, you know, we carefully.
No, General.
Well, it's not really a yes or no question, Madam Senator. We plan all kinds of different things.
I think it is a yes or no question.
I'm not aware of anything, but the reason why I'm answering is the tags may be looking at something that I'm not aware of.
What are you doing at your level? You're not aware of that happening at your level? Because we know that on his first day, President Trump directed U.S. Northern Command to revise its unified command plan to add new planning requirements to combat, and I quote, criminal activities. A series of follow-up executive orders continue to redirect DOD priorities to supporting domestic law enforcement, including one in April that tells DOD, and I quote, use national security assets for law and order. In other words, do law enforcement's job. I'd like to enter these executive orders into the record, Mr. Chairman.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered.
Hegseth, you say you are focused on warfighting and warriors. These are your words. Yet you are diverting untold DoD resources and attention to a fundamentally non-military mission of domestic policing. Across the country, we have qualified police officers who are trained for that mission. They know those streets better than the Marines you deploy to Los Angeles, who normally focus on the Indo-Pacific. And you recently approved 700 more troops in 3 other states to do admin and logistics works for ICE. You say all of this is valuable training, but I would much rather have our troops do tough, realistic training relevant to high-end combat. Instead of typing in spreadsheets for ICE, they should be conducting live-fire maneuver exercises. Instead of patrolling American neighborhoods and standing in front of federal buildings, they should be rehearsing call for fire missions. We have local police who can stand in front of those federal buildings. And the list of distractions goes on. You are encouraging the DoD workforce to go work for DHS in increasing numbers. You're pulling the military away from facing foreign enemies who literally say things like death to America. And you're putting troops with weapons aimed at Americans. Mr. Secretary, let the military get back to its real job. Stop forcing them to do DHSs. And if you want to be the DHS Secretary, maybe you can apply for that job when you're fired from this one due to your incompetence.
What you just watched is more than a sharp political exchange. It's a fundamental argument about what the U.S. military is for and what happens when that purpose starts to shift. At the center of this moment is a serious concern Democrats have been raising consistently. Are we redirecting one of the most powerful military forces in the world away from its core mission, defending the nation from external threats, and toward roles it was never meant to play inside the country? And that concern isn't abstract. It's grounded in specifics. You heard direct criticism about resources, billions of dollars spent, equipment lost, missions that didn't achieve their stated goals. That alone raises questions about leadership and decision-making. But what really drives this exchange is what comes next. The idea that while all of this is happening abroad, the military is increasingly being used at home in ways that blur a critical line. That line is the difference between military operations and civilian law enforcement. In a democracy, that distinction is intentional. Police are trained to serve communities, operate under local laws, and engage with civilians. The military is trained for combat, for foreign threats, for situations where the rules are entirely different. When those roles start to overlap, even slightly, it raises alarms. Democrats are pressing this issue because history shows how dangerous that overlap can become. When military resources, personnel, and planning begin to shift toward domestic enforcement, even under the justification of support, it creates a precedent. And precedents have a way of expanding. What makes this moment especially important is the focus on priorities. Listen closely to the argument being made. While troops are being redirected to assist with domestic operations, whether it's logistics, presence, or support, there are ongoing global threats that require attention, training, and readiness. The concern is not just about what the military is doing, but what it might not be doing as a result. Because readiness isn't something you turn on and off. It's built through constant focus training, preparing for complex, high-risk scenarios. When that time and energy is diverted, even for reasons that might seem justified in the short term, it can have long-term consequences for national security. And then there's the deeper issue of politicization. When military decisions begin to align closely with political strategies, especially in highly visible domestic contexts, it risks changing how the public sees the military. Instead of being viewed as a neutral force dedicated to protecting the country, it can start to be seen as part of a political agenda. That perception alone can erode trust, both within the country and globally. Democrats are not arguing against security or enforcement. What they're demanding is discipline in how power is used. They're asking whether the military is being deployed where it is most needed, whether resources are being used effectively, and whether constitutional boundaries are being respected. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about budgets or deployments. It's about identity. What kind of military does America have? One that is focused, prepared, and aligned with its core mission? Or one that is stretched across roles that could dilute its effectiveness? And that's why the tone of this exchange is so intense. It reflects a belief that something important is at risk, not just in terms of policy, but in terms of principle. So when you watch this, don't just focus on the sharp words or the political tension. Focus on the underlying question. Are we protecting the integrity of the military, or are we gradually reshaping it in ways that could have lasting consequences? That's the conversation Democrats are trying to force into the open, because once those lines are crossed, it's not easy to redraw them. If you want more breakdowns like this, where we go beyond the headlines and help you truly understand what's at stake, subscribe to Blue Voice, like this video, and share it with someone who needs the full picture. Because democracy works best when people understand not just what's happening, but why it matters.